Chapter 6. The training center has a tower designed exclusively for the tributes and their team. This will be our home until the actual games begin. Each district has an entire floor. You simply step onto an elevator and press the number of your district. Easy enough to remember. I've ridden the elevator a couple times in the Justice Building back in District 12. Once to receive the medal for my father's death, and then yesterday to say my final goodbyes to my family and to my friends and family. But that's a dark and creaky thing that moves like a snail and smells of sour milk. The walls of this elevator are made of crystal so that you can watch the people on the ground floor shrink to ants as you shoot up into the air. It's exhilarating, and I'm tempted to ask Effie Trinket if we can't ride it again, but somehow that seems childish. And why shouldn't she act like a child? She's 16. Apparently, Effie Trinket's duties did not conclude at the station. She and Hamish will be overseeing us right until the arena. In a way, that's a plus because at least she can be counted on to corral us around to places on time, whereas we haven't seen much of Hamish since he agreed to help us on the train. So this is also one of the comprehension questions as to why Effie is still around. This is page 73. Probably passed out somewhere. Effie Trinket, on the other hand, seems to be flying high. We're the first team she's ever chaperoned that has made a splash at the opening ceremonies. She's complimentary about not just our costumes, but how we conducted ourselves. And to hear her tell it, Effie knows everyone who's anyone in the Capitol and has been talking us up all day trying to win us sponsors. I've been very mysterious, though, she says, her eyes squint half shut, because, of course, Hamish hasn't bothered to tell me your strategies, but I've done my best with what I've had to work with. How Katniss sacrificed herself for her sister. How you've both successfully struggled to overcome the barbarism of your district. That, quote, you have to see what she's saying and how she thinks they are barbaric. And so Katniss now thinks about that, like, this is how they think of us, that we're barbaric, that we're savages. She's already called the other District 12 tributes savages. And so now they're barbaric. Barbarism, that's ironic, coming from a woman helping to prepare us for slaughter. And what's she basing our success on? Our table manners? Everyone has their reservations naturally. You'll be from the coal district, but I said, this was very clever of me. I said, well, if you put enough pressure on coal, it turns into pearls. No, you put enough pressure on coal, it turns to diamonds. So we know that Effie's not that smart, but she doesn't have to be. Effie beams at us brilliantly, like that we have no choice but to respond enthusiastically to her cleverness, even though it's wrong. Coal doesn't turn into pearls. They grow in shellfish. So, shellfish, possibly she means coal turns into diamonds, but that's untrue too. I've heard they have some sort of machine in District 1 that can turn graphite into diamonds. But we don't mind graphite in District 12. That was part of District 13's job until they were destroyed. I wonder if the people she's been plugging us in all day either know or care. They probably don't. Unfortunately, I can't seal the sponsor deals for you. Only Hamish can do that, says Effie grimly. But don't worry, I'll get him to the table at gunpoint if necessary. Although lacking in many departments, Effie Trinket has a certain determination I have to admire. My quarters are larger than our entire house back home. They are plush, like the train car, but also have so many automatic gadgets that I'm sure I won't have time to press all the buttons. The shower alone has a panel with more than 100 options you can choose, regulating water temperature, pressure, soaps, shampoos, scents, oils, and massaging sponges. When you step out on the mat, heaters come on that blow dry your body. Instead of struggling with the knots in your wet hair, I merely place my hand on a box that sends a current through my scalp, untangling, parting, and drying my hair almost instantly. It floats down around my shoulders in a glossy curtain. I program the closet for an outfit to my taste. The windows zoom in and out on parts of the city at my command. You need only whisper a type of food from a gigantic menu into your mouthpiece, and it appears hot and steamy before you in less than a minute. I walk around the room eating goose liver and puffy bread until there's a knock on the door. Effie's calling me to dinner. Good, I'm starving. Peta, Cinna, and Portia are standing out on a balcony that overlooks the Capitol when we enter the dining room. I'm glad to see the stylist, particularly after I hear Hamish will be joining us. A meal presided over by just Effie and Hamish is bound to be a disaster. Besides, dinner isn't really about food, it's about planning out our strategies, and Cinna and Portia have already proven how valuable they are. A silent young man dressed in a white tunic offers us all stemmed glasses of wine. I think about turning it down, but I've never had wine except the homemade stuff my mother uses for coughs. And when will I get a chance to try it again? I take a sip of the tart, dry liquid and secretly think it could be improved by a few spoonfuls of honey. Hamish shows up just as dinner is being served. It looks as if he's had his own stylist because he's clean and groomed and about as sober as I've ever seen him. He doesn't refuse the offer of wine, but when he starts in on his soup, I realize that it's the first time that I've seen him eat. Maybe he's really pulled himself together enough to help us. Cinna and Portia seem to have a civilized effect on Hamish and Effie. At least they're addressing each other decently, and they both have nothing but praise for our stylist's opening act. While they make small talk, I concentrate on the meal: mushroom soup, bitter greens with tomatoes the size of peas, rare roast beef slices as thin as paper, noodles in a green sauce, cheese that melts on your tongue, served with sweet blue grapes, and servers, all young people dressed in white tunics like the one who gave us wine, move wordlessly to and from the table, keeping the platters and glasses full. About halfway through my glass of wine, my head starts feeling foggy, so I change to water instead. She doesn't realize what wine can do, obviously. I don't like the feeling and hope it wears off soon. How Hamish can stand walking around like this full time is a mystery. I try to focus on the talk, which has turned to our interview costumes. When a girl sets a gorgeous-looking cake on the table and deftly lights it, it blazes up and then the flames flicker around the edges a while until it finally goes out. I have a moment of doubt. What makes it burn? Is it alcohol? I say, looking up at the girl. That's the last thing I... Oh, I know you. Page 77. You will need to know this part. I can't place a name or the time to the girl's face, but I'm certain of it. The dark red hair, the striking features, the porcelain white skin, and even as I utter the words, I feel my insides contracting with anxiety and guilt at the sight of her. And while I can't pull it up, I know some bad memories is associated with her. The expression of terror that crosses her face only adds to my confusion and unease. She shakes her head in denial quickly and hurries away from the table. When I look back, the 4 adults are watching me like hawks. Don't be ridiculous, Katniss. How could you possibly know an Avox? Snaps Effie. The very thought. What's an Avox? I ask stupidly. Someone who has committed a crime. They cut her tongue so she can't speak, says Hamish. She's probably a traitor of some sort. Not likely you'd know her. And even if you did, you're not to speak to one of them unless it's to give an order. Of course you don't really know her, says Effie. But I do know her, and now that Hamish has mentioned the word traitor, I remember from where. The disapproval is so high I could never admit it. No, I guess not. I stammer, and the wine is not helping. Peta snaps his fingers. Della Cartwright, that's who it is. I kept thinking she looked familiar as well. Then I realized she's a dead ringer for Deli. Deli Cartwright is a pasty-faced, lumpy girl with yellowish hair who looks about as much like our server as a beetle does a butterfly. She may also be the friendliest person on the planet. She smiles constantly at everybody at school, even me. I have never seen the girl with the red hair smile, but I jump on Peta's suggestion. Of course, that's who I was thinking of. It must be the hair, I say. Something about the eyes, too, says Peta. The energy at the table relaxes. Oh, well, if that's all it is, says Cinna. And yes, the cake has spirits, but all the alcohol has burned off. I order it specially in honor of your fiery debut. We eat the cake and move into a sitting room to watch the replay of the opening ceremony that's being broadcast. A few of the other couples make a nice impression, but none of them can hold a candle to us. Even our own party lets out an ah as they show us coming out of the Remake Center. Whose idea was it to hold hands? Asked Hamish. Page 79. Cinna's, says Portia. Just the perfect touch of rebellion, says Hamish. Very nice. Rebellion? I have to think about that one a moment. But when I remember the other couple standing stiffly apart, never touching or acknowledging each other, as if their fellow tribute did not exist, as if the games had already begun, I know what Hamish means. Presenting ourselves not as adversaries, but as friends has distinguished us as much as the fiery costumes. Tomorrow morning is the first training session. Meet me for breakfast and I'll tell you exactly how I want you to play it, says Hamish to Peeta and me. Now go get some sleep while the grown-ups talk. Peeta and I walk together down the corridor to our rooms. When we get to my room, he leans against the door frame, not blocking my entrance exactly, but insisting I pay attention to him. So Deli Cartwright, imagine finding her look-alike here. He's asking for an explanation, and I'm tempted to give him one. We both know he's covered for me, but here I am in his debt again. If I tell him the truth about the girl, somehow that might even things up. How can it hurt, really? Even if he repeated the story, it couldn't do me much harm. It was just something I witnessed, and he lied as much as I did about Deli Cartwright. I realize I do want to talk to someone about the girl, someone who might be able to help me figure out her story. Gail would be my first choice, but it's unlikely I'll ever see Gail again. I try to think of telling Peeta about giving him any possible advantage over me, but I don't see how. Maybe sharing a confidence will actually make him believe I see him as a friend. Besides, the idea of the girl with her maimed tongue frightens me. She has reminded me why I'm here, not to model flashy costumes and eat delicacies, but to die, a bloody death while the crowds urge on my killer. To tell or not to tell, my brain still feels slow from the wine. I stare down the empty corridor as if the decision lies there. Peeta picks up my hesitation. Have you been on the roof yet? I shake my head. Cinna showed me. You can practically see the whole city. The wind's a bit loud, though. I translate that into, no one will overhear us talking, in my head. You do have the sense that we might be under surveillance here. Can we just go up? Surely, come on, says Peeta. I follow him into a flight of stairs and lead to the roof. There's a small dome-shaped room with a door on the outside. As we step into the cool, windy evening air, I catch my breath at the view. The Capitol twinkles like a vast field of fireflies. Electricity in District 12 comes and goes. Usually we only have it a few hours a day. Often the evenings are spent in candlelight. The only time you can count on it is when they're airing the games or some important government message on the television that it's mandatory to watch. But here, there would be no shortage, ever. I'm thinking electricity is another way to control them. The only time they really get electricity is when they're watching the Hunger Games or when the government has a message. It's a little tricky to me. Peeta and I walk to a railing at the edge of the roof. I look straight down the side of the building to the street, which is buzzing with people. You can hear their cars and the occasional shout and a strange metallic tinkling. In District 12, we'd be all thinking about bed right now. I asked Cinna why they let us up here. Weren't they worried that some of the tributes might decide to jump right over the side, says Peeta. What'd he say, I asked. You can't, says Peeta. He holds out his hand into a seemingly empty space, and there's a sharp zap, and he jerks it back. Some kind of electric field throws you back on the roof. Always worried about our safety, I say. Even though Cinna has showed Peeta the roof, I wonder if we're supposed to be up here now, so late and alone. I've never seen tributes on the training center roof before, but that doesn't mean we're not being taped. Do you think they're watching us now? Maybe, he admits. Come see the garden. On the other side of the dome, they've built a garden with flower beds and potted trees. From the branches hang hundreds of wind chimes, which account for the tinkling I heard. Here in the garden on this windy night, it's enough to drown out two people who are trying not to be heard. Peeta looks at me expectantly. I pretend to examine a blossom. We were hunting in the woods one day, hidden, waiting for game, I whisper. You and your father, he whispers back. No, my friend Gail. Suddenly all the birds stopped singing at once, except one. as if it were given a warning call. And then we saw her. I'm sure it was the same girl. A boy was with her. Their clothes were tattered. They had dark circles under their eyes from no sleep. They were running as if their lives depended on it, I say. For a moment I'm silent as I remember how the sight of the strange pair, clearly not from District 12, fleeing through the woods, immobilized us. Later, we wondered if we could have helped them escape. Perhaps we might have concealed them if we'd moved quickly. Gail and I were taken by surprise, yes, but we're both hunters. We know how animals look at bay. We knew the pair was in trouble as soon as we saw them, but we only watched. The hovercraft appeared out of nowhere, I continued to Peter. I mean, one moment the sky was empty, the next it was there. It didn't make a sound, but they saw it. A net dropped down on the girl and carried her up fast, so like the elevator. They shot some sort of spear through the boy. It was attached to a cable, and they hauled him up as well. But I'm certain he was dead. We heard the girl scream once, the boy's name, I think. Then it was gone. The hovercraft vanished into thin air, and the birds began to sing again as if nothing had happened. Did they see you? Peter asked. I don't know. We were under a shelf of rock, I replied. But I do know there was a moment after the bird call, but before the hovercraft, where the girl had seen us. She locked eyes with me and called out for help, but neither Gail or I had responded. You're shivering, says Peter. The wind and the story have blown all the warmth from my body. The girl screamed. Had it been her last? Peter takes off his jacket and wraps it around my shoulders. I start to take a step back, and then I let him, deciding for a moment to accept both his jacket and his kindness. A friend would do that, right? They were from here, he asks, and he secures the bottom of my neck. I nod. They'd had that capital look about them, the boy and the girl. Where do you suppose they were going, I ask. I don't know that, I say. District 12 is pretty much the end of the line. Beyond us, there's only wilderness. If you don't count the ruins of District 13 and still smolder from the toxic bombs. They show it on television occasionally just to remind us. Or why they would leave here, Hamish had called the Avoxes traitors. Against what? It could only be the capital, but they had everything here, no cause to rebel. I leave here, Peter blurts out. Then he looks around nervously. It was loud enough to hear through the chimes. He laughs. I'd go home now if they'd let me, but you have to admit the food's prime. It's something such a guy would say. The food is the best thing, so I'd stay for that. He's covered again. If that's all you heard, it would just sound like the words of a scared tribute, not someone contemplating the unquestionable goodness of the capital. It's getting chilly. We better go in, he says. Inside the dome, it's warm and bright. His tone is conversational. Your friend Gail, he's the one who took your sister away at the reaping. Yes. Do you know him, I asked. Not really. I hear the girls talk about him a lot. I thought he was your cousin or something. You favor each other, he says. No, we're not related, I say. Peter nods, unreadable. Did he come to say goodbye to you? Yes, I say, observing him carefully. So did your father. He brought me cookies. Peter raises his eyebrows as if this is news, but after watching him lie so smoothly, I don't give this much weight. Really? Well, he likes you and your sister. I think he wishes he had a daughter instead of a house full of boys. The idea that I might have been discussed around the dinner table at the bakery fire, just in passing in Peter's house, gives me a start. It must be when the mother was out of the room. He knew your mother when they were kids, says Peter. Oh, another surprise, but probably true. Oh, yes, she grew up in town, I say. It seems impolite to say she never mentioned the baker except to compliment his bread. We're at the door. I give back his jacket. See you in the morning. See you, he says, and walks off down the hall. When I open the door, the red-headed girl is collecting my unitard and boots from where I left them on the floor before my shower. I want to apologize for possibly getting her in trouble earlier, but I remember I'm not supposed to speak to her unless I'm giving her an order. Oh, sorry, I say. I was supposed to give those back to Cinna. I'm sorry. Can you take them to him? She avoids my eyes, gives a small nod, and heads out the door. I'd set out to tell her I was sorry about dinner, but I know that my apology runs much deeper, and I'm ashamed I never tried to help her in the woods. that I let the Capitol kill the boy and mutilate her without lifting a finger, just like I was watching the games. I kick off my shoes and climb under the covers in my clothes. The shivering hasn't stopped. Perhaps the girl doesn't even remember me, but I know she does. You don't forget a face of the person who was your last hope. I pull the covers up over my head as if this will protect me from the red-headed girl who can't speak, but I can feel her eyes staring at me, piercing through walls and doors and bedding. I wonder if she'll enjoy watching me die. So, now we know who one of the AVOXs is, and that is one of the comprehension questions. I would also pay attention to how Katniss always feels like she must save everybody. This trend doesn't stop. And so it starts right here with her saving her sister, and she's always saved her sister. She's actually saved her mother. She is trying to save herself by becoming a favorite, which is also going to play into Peeta being saved. She is sad about herself and feels really guilty about the AVOX girl, the redheaded girl. The fact that her tongue has been cut out because she's a traitor, but doesn't know how that all fits into the grand scheme of things. So I would be paying very close attention to characters in the story so far. It's getting interesting. That's chapter 6.